You're lying in bed on a Sunday morning, blinds still shut, phone face down on the nightstand where you put it out of habit rather than discipline. Rain starts hitting the window. That soft, uneven tapping, no real rhythm to it, just texture. Something in your chest loosens before you've even registered why. You don't get up. You don't check your phone. You don't scroll. You don't plan the day. You don't do any of the 10 small things you'd normally be doing by now. You just lie there, breathing slower than you were 5 minutes ago, and it feels less like a choice and more like something being done to you, from the outside in. Your body is reacting to falling water the same way it reacts to a sedative, and it genuinely cannot tell the difference. This is a video about why rain calms you down, physically and chemically, not just emotionally, and about the 4 separate biological systems quietly cooperating behind the scenes to make that happen without asking your permission first. By the end of this, you'll understand why your brain treats a rainstorm less like weather and more like a stand-down order, and why, for some people, that exact same order, run for too long, backfires completely and turns into the opposite feeling entirely. Start with the smell, because it arrives before anything else does, before the sound, before you've even seen a cloud. That specific scent right before or during rain has a name, petrichor, coined in 1964 by 2 Australian researchers, Isabel Baer and Richard Thomas, working at Australia's National Science Agency, CSIRO. They discovered the smell isn't the rain itself. It comes from a compound called geosmin, produced by soil-dwelling bacteria and released into the air the moment raindrops strike dry ground, kicking up microscopic aerosols that carry the compound straight to your nose. Humans are absurdly sensitive to it. Some estimates put our detection threshold at just a handful of parts per trillion, which makes geosmin one of the smells we're most attuned to on the entire planet, more sensitive than we are to most things we'd actually call dangerous. Your nose evolved to notice rain before your eyes ever could. But here's where it gets interesting. That heightened sensitivity to geosmin isn't just a quirky evolutionary leftover with no real purpose. Some researchers argue it's directly tied to survival itself. Water meant everything to early humans. Crops, rivers, drinkable sources, the difference between a livable stretch of land and a dead one. A 2015 study published in the journal Nature Microbiology proposed that our ancestors' unusually fine-tuned ability to detect geosmin at trace levels may have helped them track fertile, water-rich soil across unfamiliar terrain, long before maps or memory could do the job. In other words, that calm you feel isn't decoration, and it isn't random. It's an ancient reward system, older than language, quietly telling you, good ground, good water, you're safe here, stop moving, you can rest. But here's where it gets interesting. Sound does something separate, and arguably even stronger than smell in shaping how calm you actually feel. Rain produces what acousticians call broadband noise, a wash of frequencies that blend together instead of spiking sharply, sitting in the same category as white noise, pink noise, and brown noise. The exact sounds sleep apps have been packaging and selling you for the better part of a decade. A wide body of sleep research, including work summarized by Northwestern University's Sleep and Cognition Lab, has shown that consistent background noise can mask sudden environmental sounds. A door slam, a car horn, a raised voice in the next room, that would otherwise jolt your brain out of rest entirely, resetting your nervous system back to alert. Rain doesn't just sound soothing in some vague, poetic way. It functions like a sonic blanket, smoothing out the sharp edges of your environment so nothing sudden can reach you while you're trying to switch off. Your brain isn't relaxing in spite of the noise. It's relaxing because of it. But here's where it gets interesting. There's also a widely repeated theory about negative ions. The idea that rain generates charged particles in the air that boost mood and increase oxygen flow to the brain. cited constantly in wellness spaces as settled fact. This one deserves more skepticism than it usually gets. Some studies from the mid-20th century, including early ionization research out of environmental physiology labs, reported mild mood improvements in ion-rich air, but later attempts to replicate those effects have been inconsistent at best, and the underlying mechanism is still actively debated among researchers who study it today. It's a case where the popular explanation sprinted way ahead of the actual evidence and never really got caught, because it sounded scientific enough that nobody checked. Not every calming theory about rain survives contact with better research, and this is the one you should hold loosely. But here's where it gets interesting. Light plays a role too, and it's almost the opposite of what you'd guess walking in. Overcast, rainy skies lower overall light intensity, which nudges your body toward producing more melatonin, the hormone most tied to drowsiness, earlier in the day than it would on a bright, high-sun afternoon with a clear sky. A well-documented body of circadian rhythm research, including studies out of institutions like the Salk Institute on how light governs internal clocks, shows that dim, diffuse light signals your brain that it's closer to rest time than your actual clock says it is, regardless of what the hour actually reads. Rain doesn't just sound like bedtime. To your hormones, running quietly in the background without asking your permission, it partially is bedtime, whether or not you've decided to sleep. Your body starts winding down before you've consciously decided anything at all. But here's where it gets interesting. Temperature adds a fifth layer that most people never clock consciously, even though they feel it every time. Rain typically drops the air temperature by several degrees within a short window, and that shift interacts directly with your body's thermoregulation system. The same system responsible for the drowsy feeling you get when you're warm under a blanket in a cool room. Research on sleep onset, including work referenced by the National Sleep Foundation, points to a specific pattern. Your core body temperature needs to drop slightly for sleep to initiate smoothly, and a cool room paired with warmth under covers replicates that drop artificially. Rain does the outdoor version of that same trick for free, cooling the air around you while you stay warm and dry inside it. Your body reads that temperature contrast as a cue to power down, the same cue a cool bedroom gives it every night, without you ever setting a thermostat. Here's the wrinkle, and it matters more than the calming part. Not everyone gets calm rain. Some people get the opposite, and the difference isn't a personality quirk, it's dosage. Persistent gray weather is linked, in a well-established body of research, to seasonal affective disorder, where the same dim light that soothes you across a single Sunday morning becomes draining across weeks of consecutive overcast days with no real break in between. The chemistry that relaxes you in a 2-hour window can, stretched across an entire season without relief, tip into something heavier and much harder to shake off. Calm and low mood turn out to be closer neighbors than they look on the surface. Same underlying mechanism, wildly different dose, wildly different outcome depending entirely on the person standing in it and how long they've been standing there. Researchers who study seasonal mood patterns generally point to duration and light exposure as the deciding factors, not the rain itself. A single storm and a 6-week gray stretch are triggering the same biology, just at completely different intensities, which is part of why the line between "this feels nice" and "this feels heavy" can be so hard to notice while you're inside it. So, you're back in that bed, blinds shut, rain on the glass, phone still face down where you left it, exactly where the video started. Except now you know it was never just one feeling. It was 5 biological systems, built over millions of years of trial and error, quietly agreeing that you were safe enough to stop bracing for a while. Weather didn't just happen to you that morning. Your body remembered something older than you. Older than your name. Older than your bed. Older than the roof over it. And for a few quiet minutes, it decided that was enough to let you rest.